Hello, everyone. Teacher Quentin here with part 2 of our series on the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals, otherwise known as SDGs. In our first episode of this series, we discussed goals 1 and 2 and also gave a summary of what the United Nations is and what the overall point or why they have created these 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So today we will be discussing goals 3 through 5. Okay, so let's get started. Goal number 3 of the UN 17 SDGs is for good health and well-being. So the UN's goal is to ensure healthy lives and to promote well-being for all at all ages. So we all know that none of us like to be ill, we don't like our family members to be ill, and we want everyone to be healthy. And that is what the basis of the UN's goal here is. So let's look at some additional details. We know that the pandemic, COVID-19, has had a tremendous effect on the health and well-being of those around the world. The pandemic has halted or reversed progress in health and has actually shortened life expectancy in many places. 90% of countries are still reporting one or more disruptions to their essential health services. Now, when I speak of life expectancy, what exactly do I mean? Life expectancy is the average number of years people in a place are predicted to live. It is often used as a measure of the region's overall health or that health of the country. And so, what we're saying here is that the longer the life expectancy, the more healthy we generally expect that region or country to be. Whereas the shorter the life expectancy, the less healthy we would typically expect that country or region to be. So higher life expectancy is always the goal. Next, we can see that we have had an effect on actual healthcare workers. And so in many regions around the world, there is a shortage of healthcare workers. Now, this depends on where you are in the world. As you can see by these statistics, if you were in North America, there is on average 150 nurses and midwives for every 10,000 people. Whereas, if you happen to live in sub-Saharan Africa, there are only 10 nurses or midwives per 10,000 people. As you can see, that is a big disparity or a big difference in the amount of healthcare workers you would have depending on where you live. So what do we mean by sub-Saharan Africa? Well, sub-Saharan Africa is a region of Africa that is below the Sahara Desert. So if you see here on the map, all of the regions in blue are considered sub-Saharan Africa. Also, another word you may not be familiar with is a midwife. What is a midwife or midwives? Well, a midwife is a healthcare worker that helps women during pregnancy and childbirth. They tend to use more natural methods, such as home birth, than a traditional hospital. So midwives are often very important when it comes to rural areas in the world that may not have access to mainstream hospitals or health centers. Alright, so now let's move on to the UN's fourth SDG. So the fourth goal of the UN's program is quality education. The UN wants to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning for all people. So what do we mean by inclusive and equitable? Well, inclusive means that everyone is able to receive a quality education, not just certain groups in certain areas. And equitable is a word that comes from equal. And so if something is equitable, that means that it is the same or the same quality for everyone. Not just a certain group of people may have higher quality and a certain group of people with lower quality. So we want education and quality education to be both inclusive and equitable. Let's look at some more details. We know that COVID 19 has had a big impact on education. Many of you probably experienced a difference in education while the pandemic was happening and ravaging many areas of our world. COVID 19 has wiped out 20 years of gains in education. An additional 101 million, or 9% of children in grades 1 through 8, have fallen below the minimum reading proficiency levels in 2020. So, as you can see here on this graphic, only 45% of the world's children in grades 1 through 8 actually are able to read at a proficient level for their grade. Now, what do I mean by proficient? Proficient is a word that means that you are able to do something at a level that meets or exceeds what is expected. So, in the case of reading, I would expect a first grader to read at a first grade level, whereas an eighth grade or someone in grade 8, I would expect them to know more words and be able to read at a higher level. So proficiency depends on your age and what grade level you are in. But in either case, we can see that only 45% of the world's children in grades 1 through 8 actually can read at a proficient level for their grade. Also, we can see that there has been slow progress in the completion of school by children around the world. If you look here, you can see that between 2010 and 2019, there was only a 3% increase in the amount of children who completed primary school. In the years 20 to 2019 for secondary school, the percentage is a little higher at 7% different, but 53% is still not very high for those actually completing secondary school or high school. And so this is something that the UN definitely wants to increase as a part of their goal of quality education for all people. And lastly, we can look at basic infrastructure for schools. So schools that are in low developed countries or LDCs, they lack a lot of basic infrastructure that really hurts how well their students are able to learn. Only 56% of schools in these LDCs actually have drinking water. Only 33% even have electricity, and only 40% have proper hand washing facilities, which we know has become so important since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now let's just take a moment to pause here and imagine that you went to a school that didn't have drinking water. Or maybe you attended a school that didn't even have electricity. How would that make you feel, or how would that impact your learning? It would make it a lot more difficult. I can ensure that. Now, while we're talking about schools and infrastructure, let's just make sure we define what infrastructure actually means. So infrastructure has to do with the physical structure of a building or the services available within the building that help it operate. So, in the example that we just discussed, the infrastructure, the physical building, and the services such as drinking water, electricity, hand washing facilities, these are things that we need to make better around the world so that children in all areas can receive a quality education. All right, moving on to the fifth goal of the 17 SDGs that the United Nations has. Our fifth goal is gender equality. So the UN wants to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. So what does that mean to empower someone? When we empower someone, we give them the support and the means necessary to accomplish and better their lives. And so the UN hopes to empower all women and girls to seek better positions within their lives and in their communities. So let's look a little deeper. Women's equal participation in decision making is crucial to our response to COVID-19 and also just to solving a lot of the world's problems. But if you look here at these statistics, we can see that in national parliaments, women only make up 25.6% of positions in national governments. In local governments, such as your city government or county government, women only make up 36.3%. And in managerial positions in places of work, women only make up 28.2%. So in all three of these categories, we are nowhere near 50%. Now, let's quickly look at managerial positions, and let's talk about what that means. So a managerial position is a position of leadership where you are responsible for other workers or a team of employees. So think about your school principal. Your school principal is in charge of all of the teachers and manages the teachers and the different programs that are offered at your school. So this is an example of a managerial position. And we see that women only hold 28.2% of these types of positions around the world. So still a very low number and not anywhere near 50%. Also, when we think about equality and empowering women, we also have to think about domestic and unpaid care work that many women do. During the COVID-19 pandemic, it has added an additional burden of unpaid and domestic care work that is actually forcing many women out of the workforce. Before the pandemic, women already spent about 2.5 times as many hours as men on unpaid domestic and care work. So, what exactly do we mean by domestic work? So, domestic work is work that is done around the home, such as cooking, cleaning, and taking care of young children. As we can see here, even before the pandemic, women did 2.5 times more of this type of work than men did. And so, in order to have true gender equality, we need to close that gap of how much domestic work women are required to do. Now, before we move on, I did want to show two great examples of where we should be moving toward. These two pictures represent two women who are in very powerful positions within their country. Tsai Ing-wen, the president of Taiwan, and Kamala Harris, the vice president of the United States. Now, while both of these women are excellent examples of where we want to go, We are not quite there yet. And if you only have to look at the statistic that only about a quarter of national government positions are even held by women. And that number is even less if we look at women who are in the highest positions of government, such as president or vice president. But these are two excellent examples of where we hope to go and what we would like to see in the future. So, as always, we've talked about these three goals 3, 4, and 5, but what can we do as citizens to help the UN's mission and accomplish these three goals? So, a quick review. Our three goals for this video are: number 3 was good health and well-being, number 4, quality education, and number 5, gender equality. So, what can we do as regular citizens and students in the world? First, we can continue to be aware and raise awareness. Education is one of the biggest ways that we can make change in this world. As you continue to learn about some of these major problems that exist in certain regions of the world, you become more aware of them, and therefore it makes you want to help. And so, becoming more aware and also spreading that awareness to your friends, family, co-workers, these are ways that you can help the UN in this mission. Also, we want to always have gratitude. Have gratitude for the fact that many of us are able to receive a quality education just because of where we were born and where we live. And so this is something that we always want to keep in mind and take advantage of, because this is not often the case for many children around the world. And lastly, when it comes to gender equality, for all of the boys and men out there, we need to help the women in our lives and support their goals at home, in education, and in their professional lives. This may mean taking on some of those domestic responsibilities. Maybe you could help out with the cooking and the cleaning, and just being a support for our mothers, our sisters, our aunts, just being supportive of their goals and what they hope to achieve in their lives. For all the girls and women out there, continue your efforts to become leaders in our community and world. Know that it is possible and that we need more of you and more of your voices in our communities as leaders around the world. Okay, everyone, so this has been a summary of goals 3 through 5 of the UN 17 SDGs. Please join us in our next video where we will discuss goals 6 and 7. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.